I have a question about message, and I'm genuinely curious about this. You said things such as how many $1 trillion we have gotten into debt, how many 40 cents on the dollar that we are borrowing. To us, I think I could speak for most of us, that's a very familiar message. And the idea among relatively right-of-center Republicans that we are in a crisis is a very familiar idea.
Right.
We're aware of it. It doesn't mean it doesn't need to be reinforced. However, outsider group, we don't really know how serious less politically involved people think we are, how dire the straits are, and how you would communicate that to people. Now, when you are out there, you must, to speak to non-Republicans or very unpolitical Republicans, how do you frame it and how do they react?
Well, this is an interesting, if you guys will indulge me, I'd say there are two questions. I mentioned I've been at the Kennedy School for the last couple of years. Well, there's a debate. Are we in a debt crisis or a jobs crisis? And in general, we're in both.
Right.
But you'd be surprised. It's actually the left who is embracing the debt crisis more than the right who's embracing the job crisis. But they both attack the issue differently. But they'll both accept there's a crisis. So it's not really controversial to say we have a job and a debt crisis. Naturally, if you're on the left, you think we ought to borrow and spend our way. You know, in a sense, borrow from our children, our grandchildren, and have everyone lean on a shovel, and that's going to get us out of it. Or if you're on the right, you say we're spending far too much, which I'm in that camp. So perhaps it's not enough in the interest of messaging to make sure.
Well, when you get to an average citizen and they've not maybe necessarily contemplated this.
Okay. I think what's resonated, and I don't know if you all agree, I know we have to be out here in 10 minutes. I'll try to keep my answers quick, because I know they're going to start shutting the lights off. I understand. I think what was great this past week, 2 weeks ago we talked about Obamacare, and everyone had their head held low because of that issue. I don't want to talk about Obamacare today necessarily. I think what happened last week about Obama talking about don't think you created that business on your own, it was the government. I think that did a lot to galvanize, sort of wake sleeping giants. I think that laid bare the two different perspectives on America. And I think what happens, and when I sit there and think, well, why is that so wrong? I think what's happened in Obama's universe and with liberals, they conflate society with government. To them, government and society are one and the same. Nobody in this room thinks that he did it on his own. But I think perhaps nobody in this room would attribute the government to the list of organizations that help them get where they are. We have our family, we have our community, we have perhaps our church, we have our immediate universe that helped us get here. The government is the last on the list of people who helped us. I'm sure we were all there that first day when we went and got our first paycheck. We imagined how many hours we worked and what our hourly rate was. We thought about all the great things we're going to do spending that money. And you open up the check and half of it's gone. And you say, what the hell happened? That might have been when we went from being perhaps neutral politically to being a little bit more to the right. I'm in that camp. So I agree there's a job crisis, there's a debt crisis. For me, reducing the size of the government is a solution to both. I would say, insofar as a business owner, I did create those factories and I did create those jobs, and I would like the government to allow me to decide what I do with that money. And this sounds like a familiar Republican song, but for me, there's no question the government's far too big, and we need to reduce its size. We have to commit to that. I've signed the pledge for no new taxes. I said I sat down with Grover Norquist himself. It's not such the pledge itself is not as difficult to comply with as some people think. They say, well, even if you want to rationalize or normalize tax rates, provided you reduce the marginal tax rates, you're okay. So we could change the tax code, provided that the net taxes don't increase. So if we make it more simple, more fair, we can still comply with Grover's pledge and make the tax code a lot more fair and encourage more business. So when I talk about marginal tax rates, I think everybody understands what I'm saying. We need to reduce the amount of money that you pay on the next dollar you earn. Not on the first, but the next.
Tax incidence versus tax burden.
That's right.
Where do you think the tax is being in that? I got one question regarding messaging. The Communist Party used the word forward all the time.
Right.
Obama is using the word forward, and I saw this today, and I'm going like, what's going on here?
You can pick any three words in the English language. You can pick any word in the English language, and both sides have used it for their end. So it's my hope that people, we talked about what is on people's mind. I think ultimately people are concerned that we're just at loggerheads. All we do is beat each other up and don't come to any reasonable conclusion. I think we can work with both sides to figure out how to make the tax code simpler, to make people feel like they are being dealt a fair hand. Again, in the Kennedy School, we have these fights over Occupy Wall Street versus Tea Party. I said there's a similar thread in both. One is the individual versus the establishment, the individual versus the other, the big thing. And the boogeyman on the left is Halliburton or Exxon or whatever they want to say. And the boogeyman on the right is the government. Well, I would argue that in both cases, it's the same monster. What's happening is they're colluding to, in a sense, take the power from us.